sunny spaces, smiling faces, happy places. But every sunny space holds a shadow. Behind every smile are sharp teeth, and every happy place has something sinister lurking just below the surface.
Welcome to We Saw the Devil, the podcast diving deep into the chilling realms of true crime. Join your host Robin as she unravels mysteries that have left investigators baffled and armchair sleuths obsessed. Be forewarned, dear listener. We Saw the Devil is not for the faint of heart. Our unflinching exploration will take you to the darkest corners of the psyche and through the unimaginable depths of human darkness to unearth stark secrets to the harsh light of day. Nothing will be left untouched. Are you ready? Are you sure? We saw the devil.
Hello, everyone. You are listening to We Saw the Devil. This is Robin, and I'm back. Hello, babes. I know I'm a jerk. This last month has been insane. I feel like I say that every time. It seems like every time I have good intentions, life just gets hectic. But I'm super excited about today's episode. It's going to be a bit of a mishmash and a bit outside of the realm of what I usually talk about on We Saw the Devil. But seriously, it's been wild in the news lately. Whether it's Luigi Mangione becoming America's folk hero. Oh my God, the memes have been just chef's kiss with the United Healthcare CEO debacle. Politics, the election, whatever. I don't know if you've seen, but lately on top of it, all of the major outlets are reporting on the UFOs, or shall I say UAPs. For those of you who are not aware, apparently we have now changed the terminology from UFO, which unidentified flying object, to UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, which covers land, water, and air. It basically is not just flying, it covers everything, because that's where we are now. We need a term to cover everything. And these are apparently being spotted all around the country by many people. I'm talking tens of thousands of people have reported seeing this and are taking videos and pictures. It's all over the internet. NPR has reported on it almost daily for 2 weeks now. I was watching the news on Thanksgiving, and CNN literally had breaking news of the UAPs in New Jersey. And just tonight, as I logged into my laptop to finalize the script so I could record it, all of the Facebook and Reddit groups for my city, which is a little suburb outside of Nashville, they were exploding with UAP sightings tonight here literally a mile from my house. Videos, pictures, and it's wild. Here locally where I am, there were a grouping of like 6 of them flying over Nashville in various areas, and people caught it on video, and it looks strange. In Arizona, at one of the airports, there were lots of videos coming out of that with aircrafts that were strangely shaped. Again, thousands of people saw it. In New Jersey, I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth here in a moment and talk about what's being reported. But it was all over the entire state of New Jersey. And, it's crazy. So we're going to get into that and talk about that. And then after, when that started happening, I went down the rabbit hole of the Congressional hearing that happened with the whistleblowers in relation to UAPs. And we found out a shit ton there. So then that made me go down the TikTok rabbit hole, and I discovered a human being by the name of Darryl Anka. And this is going to sound batshit, because it is. And I'm not saying that I believe it, guys, because I don't. But he has quite a following. And his name is Darryl Anka. And basically, he supposedly connects and channels with an alien entity that he calls Bashar. And if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, Robin, Jesus Christ, what are you doing? Why are you talking about this? Because it is crazy, okay? And he has a huge following of people. He does talks and seminars and things like that. And they are sold out within seconds. People pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to have a 30-minute conversation with him, which, You know how I feel about people and money, but I mean, whatever. Utilizing money and charging for things like that. But it's insanity. And again, he's followed by thousands of people. So I want to touch on him too, because I went down the rabbit hole and he actually made a couple of legitimate predictions across the last decade or so. But then after I went down that rabbit hole, I went down the rabbit hole of psychics who have assisted in solving crimes. And that made me be like, WTF. So I just kind of want to have a mishmash episode of random shit that probably is it's completely outside the realm of true crime, but we're going to talk about it anyway, okay? Just because this is going to be the most discombobulated episode I've probably ever done, but it's just so fascinating. But first I want to talk about what I've been up to for the last couple of weeks, because I'm so happy. And if you don't care, before you go to iTunes or whatever and say, oh my God, you talked about yourself for so long, blah, 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 just freaking fast forward. I mean, if you're listening to this on your phone, I would think you probably have an opposable thumb, so you can just fast forward 10 minutes, okay? If you don't care, and you'll be fine, I promise. So I intended originally to get the next episode out, right? The second to last week of November, but then work got super busy. I'm now a director at my job, so that has a little bit of additional responsibility. And then on the 19th, I went to go see Queen Herbie in Nashville. And if you're not familiar, check her out. You may remember her from like 2008 or so in the pop band Carmen. Well, she also went viral back then for being this pretty white girl who speed rapped Chris Brown's song, Look at Me Now. If you haven't seen that, or you weren't on it had millions of views. It went completely viral. So I think that was like 2005, 2008. But yeah, look up Look at Me Now, Carmen, Karmin. She's incredible. Well, she and her boyfriend, who became her husband, ended up starting the band Carmen, and they got signed. They had a couple big albums come out, and then they got tired of it, and it wasn't authentic to them, so they quit. And she rebranded as Queen Herbie. And y'all, I've never experienced energy like that in a show before in my life. It was so much fun. I mean, everyone around me was basically a woman in my age group. So if you're like 25 through 45 and a woman, I guarantee you'll love her. It's just all about, being authentic to yourself and learning the lessons and doing better. And it's uplifting. And then she has other songs about, like satirical pop culture songs. One's called Sugar Daddy. That's probably her biggest one. But it's satirical and it's hilarious. But yeah, so saw Queen Herbie, and that was a lot of fun. Other than that, work was pretty super intense. And I was also preparing to go see my all-time favorite artist, Chelsea Wolfe. If you guys know me, I basically worship her. She's occasionally doom metal, occasionally the quietest and softest folk music you've ever heard. Sometimes with her newest album, she's more electronic. I mean, she's just brilliant. And from the first time I heard her metal album first. I mean, it was just love at first listen. But I saw her make an announcement on Instagram that she's been on a tour. I saw her back in March, and she's been on a world tour promoting her newest album, which is super electronic, right? And I saw her a couple months ago drop a post about how she was going to have a totally acoustic and stripped down set playing new and old songs. And that they were all going to be, there were like 5 dates, and they were all going to be held in historic older churches across the country. I mean, we're talking about like one in New York, show in Philadelphia, another show in California. I mean, this was just very, very, very small and intimate, right? It never happens. Like, it never happens. I've seen Chelsea twice. I saw her in Portland, Oregon at a theater with 1,500 people. And then I saw her back in March at a small crap club in Nashville because people have no culture here. And she's just incredible. But clearly, my all-time favorite artist doing an acoustic set, like, I had to go. Philadelphia ended up being the closest show at the First Unitarian Universalist Church. So I bought tickets the minute they went on sale, and it was sold out within like 5 minutes. I guess most importantly, a lot of you know that I've been through a lot in the last couple of years. Most of you know that I was in a severely abusive, physically relationship. Actually, when I started this podcast, I talked about that on a Patreon only episode. During that period, I also lost both of my parents in the pandemic. I was forced to move from my beloved Portland back to Nashville. That relationship ended. And then I ended up meeting someone new that I frankly actually thought was the person for me, like was it for me. And that relationship ended up being a complete and total farce and also pretty emotionally abusive. So that ended. And for whatever reason, I've always struggled with processing my emotions in life. I get it out via music. For some reason, I can't just process. I will bottle everything up, push it aside. Life goes on, don't think about it. And I think a lot of that makes me come off as a callous bitch at times, to be frank. But I've always, when I've gotten to that place, I process via music, playing it, I play guitar, listen to it. And I've always been that way. And Chelsea Wolfe just always magically drops music at every important juncture of my life. She has this song called Half Sleeper, and it's my favorite song in the history of the world. If you're interested in hearing it, look up on YouTube the Strombo, Strombo show, Chelsea Wolfe, and it's the second song that she plays. It's a song about a couple sung from the point of view of one of them, and they're currently dying after being in a car crash. It's a super bloody scene. The description of it is so beautiful, but one of the inspirations behind it was seeing roadkill on the side of the road that was super gory and bloody. And, its intestines and whatnot are, hanging out. Like it was roadkill. She talks about like memories streaming in the wind, like cassette tapes or jellyfish. And she writes this beautiful song about being so in love with someone and then talking about, how as you're laying there dying, smeared across the pavement, how none of the arguments mattered. Nothing, none of that mattered. And it's so beautiful and sad. So that is one of my favorite songs. I mean, this couple is in a liminal state between life and death, hence the title. And I don't know why, but it is the most hauntingly gut-wrenching and beautiful song I've ever heard in my entire life. I have listened to it thousands of times. Whenever I'm grieving something, like I said, I don't process very easily. I'm a push-asider, but whenever I have to and I'm forced to, I can put Half Sleeper on and it's basically instant catharsis. And there's just something about Chelsea's voice in this song that's so visceral. It reaches into my chest. It envelops all of the grief that I have in whatever moment, and it demands that I experience and feel it. That block in that grief process where you're stuck and you have no choice but to turn inward in order to break through and move forward. And that's what that song does for me. And it's wild. It's magical in a sense, but it's pure catharsis and it makes me cry all the time. And she never, ever, ever really plays it live, ever. Very, very rarely, at least. Fun aside, the first time I went to go see her in Portland, Oregon, that was my favorite song then. That was back in 2018. And I sent her a message on Facebook and I'm like, hey, can you please play Half Sleeper? And all I got was a smiley face emoji back. And she actually ended up playing Half Sleeper as the encore at the Portland show. I also cried then, along with 1,400 other people. But in any case, this mini tour kicked off 2 nights before I saw her, and I saw that Half Sleeper was the second song that she was going to play, if she kept the same set list. And I had hope. I was so excited. And so my friend and I ended up flying out to Philly last week. Also, side note, I do not recommend large doses of edibles before getting on a plane. On the off chance that there is turbulence, which cough, cough, there was, and it was terrifying, it does make it really miserable. I'm a seasoned flyer myself, but horse dose of edibles plus turbulence is not a fun flight make. But in any case, we got there Friday. We went to the French restaurant Park, which was, holy crap, amazing. And then we did some things around Philly until the show, and took a nap until the show on Saturday night. Now, it was at a church, so it was general admission in the pews, right? So my friend loves Chelsea just as much as I do. And so we got there an hour and a half early and stood outside in 20-degree weather, literally freezing our tits off, just so we could get a good seat in the church. So the doors opened, and I don't know if any of you have been to the first Unitarian Universalist Church in Philadelphia, but it is so ungodly beautiful. So ungodly beautiful. I have pictures of all of this on my Instagram and show clips, but it was just gorgeous. We could have gotten first row, but decided that we wanted to be a little less obvious. I don't want Chelsea Wolfe seeing me sob like a child, so we opted to go back into the center, and we were like the fourth row. They had folding chairs in the front and then pews. And so we sat on the first row of pews, which was actually a fourth row center. I mean, it was so close and so intimate. And then my friend and I, the entire couple weeks leading up to the trip, had been making bets on who was going to cry first. Chelsea came out, and she started singing this a cappella song called Serenum Scopuli, which, fun fact, is the name of the island chain where the sirens lived, the ones who used to sing it and call out to sailors and lure them to their death. And it's so beautiful. I mean, chills. Her vocal range just chills. So I look over at my friend, 20 seconds into the show, she's already crying. Like, she's already wiping, her black eyeshadow, black mascara, her makeup and whatnot, like tears streaming down her face 20 seconds in. So go me, I won that bet. And then when that first song was coming to a close, I got my phone out. I was like, please, I wonder if she's going to play Half Sleeper. She gets her acoustic guitar and she launched into the most beautiful version of Half Sleeper that I have ever heard in my entire life. I mean, I'm almost getting teary just thinking about it now. I cried. I mean, a lot of people were crying. And I've never, ever, 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 ever felt that level of electricity and emotion, beauty, devastation. I mean, it was just catharsis, y'all. It was so intense. Every single song was beautiful and gave us chills. I mean, but it felt like a complete and total release of all emotions that I've had bottled up for a fucking decade. Like an hour and a half long therapy appointment that fixed me entirely. I feel like I have full clarity, just understanding. Like, I feel like a brand new person right now because of this experience. And I know it sounds insane, but it was the most ethereal and beautiful thing that I have ever witnessed. But after the show, we went and got food, went back to the hotel. Sunday, we went to the Mutter Museum, which if you're into true crime or medical history, you clearly need to go. Huge skull collection, some cool skeletons. The post-mortem project was also super freaking cool. And then also Googled a soap lady. I'll say no more about that. But it was such a cool trip. It was just mind-blowing, really. Metaphysical in a sense. And I returned home Monday, and I've just been busy catching up with work. The podcast, this episode has been heavily on my mind, wanting to get this out. And yeah, guys, I mean, I feel like I just said, I feel like a brand new human. Totally refreshed outlook on life, love, the pursuit of happiness. I feel really, really good. Best weekend of my life, for sure, hands down. And I'm hoping that that's going to translate into me getting my shit together for this podcast and getting it back on a concise and exact schedule. I mean, not going to lie, I was struggling there for a while. I mean, it was like Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events for a long time in my life, and everything feels good now. But in any case, I guess, I mean, you didn't come here or click this podcast episode to listen to my concert and personal events and emotional schedule. So let's talk about some random weird and creepy shit that I've just gone down the rabbit hole of over the last month, I guess. Okay, so the rabbit hole, I don't know if it was for the entirety of the internet or just for me, but it started last month. So November 2024, last month, there was a government panel convened by the House Oversight Committee, and it was basically a hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena. Again, basically UFOs, right? And these discussions centered around allegations of government suppression of UAP information and the existence of several secretive government programs related to the recovery and study of extraterrestrial technology. A few of the witnesses included Luis Elizondo, who was a former Pentagon official, and then also Tim Gallaudet, a retired Navy admiral. Well, Luis Elizondo emphasized, emphatically, that UAPs are real and said that they exhibit advanced capabilities beyond human technology. The discussion centered around the fact that, yes, they are there. They are seen all the time. They have likely been here since before we have been here, and we are seeing them, and they have been recovered. Again, recovered, meaning crashed aircraft or whatever, on every major continent. That every single continent, various other countries have also recovered UAPs, and that the United States has also recovered multiple UAPs, some with quote unquote non-human biologics. I'll let you take a second. Again, an ex-Pentagon official said that we have more or less recovered aliens. And it's wild. He talked about how there's a global quote unquote arms race that's focusing on reverse engineering these technologies. Basically, let's say China or Iran, someone who's not an ally to us necessarily, recovers one of these crafts. It's basically the entire world and all the countries are in a form of an arms race trying to reverse engineer the technology on these crafts because they are so much more advanced than what we have and what we are capable of. And Tim Gallaudet talked about an experience that he had just a couple, 9 years ago, back in 2015, where he saw a UAP demonstrate unprecedented flight characteristics during a naval exercise. And not only that, but basically the next day after, hundreds of reports of actual visual people on the ground seeing that with their own eyes, as well as many other military members. And unsurprisingly, after this particular hearing, the Defense Department spokeswoman, Susan Go, she issued a statement saying that the Pentagon's inquiries had not turned up, quote, any verifiable information to substantiate claims that any programs regarding the possession or reverse engineering of extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently. This particular panel, the hearing, they also discussed and addressed claims of whistleblower retaliation, with witnesses highlighting a culture of suppression, overclassification of documents and reports within the government. And they argued that this stifles transparency and public understanding of the phenomena, that this is getting more and more frequent, that yes, we are seeing more UAPs. They are not human in origin. And basically the government needs to fucking admit to it. And lawmakers on both sides, because look, I know Democrats and Republicans, times be tense, right? I see it with my friends. I've seen it just everywhere. People online, the election, the news, people are not coming together right now, Well, lawmakers express bipartisan frustration over the lack of access to UAP-related information because the Department of Defense is simply not releasing any information that they have. They're not telling the truth. They're not being honest. They're not being upfront. And it's something that I think about all the time. Not all the time. That makes me sound crazy. And it's not all the time. But, why do you guys think that the government just won't be honest about it? So many people, is it, that it would lead the world into chaos? Is it organized religion? Is it all of the above? So many people have had experiences or seen weird and strange things. I have even seen a weird thing once in my life. I was living in Maine. It was about 7:30 in the evening. I was driving home, and I had to drive alongside the Kennebec River outside of Augusta to drive home when I was living in central Maine. And I was going probably about 50 miles an hour or so, and I look over to my left, and I saw something like flying above the water. Like it was flying above the river, parallel to me, going in my direction. And it had multiple weird lights, and it was going really, really fast. And there was no sound. It was completely mute. I even rolled down my window. I was like, damn, that's a fast boat, at nighttime, because it was nighttime. And it was wild. I didn't sit there and think, oh my God, that's an alien. And I've never really ruminated on it since. But, it was interesting to see. It was definitely odd. So yeah, it's just so many people have experiences like this. And it's wild that the US government is not admitting to anything, but yet hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ex-Pentagon officials, ex-Department of Defense, ex-Navy are coming out and being like, yeah, I either worked in this project, I headed this project, I was responsible for this project or the reporting, or I've read, and it's just, there's no transparency, There was another discussion at this hearing where they talked about a program called Immaculate Constellation. And apparently that is the name of the program that documents UAP encounters and recovery efforts. And it was a wild hearing. If you can find a copy of it on YouTube, I highly suggest you do so. There are a lot of channels that rehash it, but you need to actually watch it with your own eyes because it is just insane. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel, but I mean, the hearing for me definitely underscored, that there needs to be a shift from the secrecy to a little bit more open discourse and inquiry on this, because it's wild, especially because of the last month or so. Since November last month, there's been an increased attention to UFO sightings. And these are not just, Joe Jim Bob down, on a mountain or a holler saying that he was abducted and probed. These are legit sightings of unexplained phenomena that are being caught on video, and they make no sense. And, air traffic, air control, how you can go on like Flight Radar, Flight 24 and get the flight path, no aircrafts in the vicinity. May not be a military base nearby. It just depends. There have been hundreds of sightings just in the month alone. Complete huge uptick. Well, a lot of this is kind of dovetailing off the fact that also last month in November, there was a report from the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, also known as AARO. And that report talks about these 100 sightings, although it does explain that most of them were explainable as balloons, drones, flocks of birds, satellites like Starlink. But there were 21 cases in this report that remain unexplained. These involve unusual flight characteristics or occurrences near sensitive locations like military bases and nuclear silos. And these unexplained incidents often defy easy categorization because of their speed, size, maneuverability, and shape. Like, very clearly, it is not what we know of as, current modern, military or commercial aircrafts. And, lawmakers and defense officials, they are constantly emphasizing the importance of understanding whether these are going to pose national security risks or air safety. We have many flight lanes across this country. And the U.S. Senate has even recently called for greater transparency in UFO investigations in order to address public interests and concerns. I mean, it's absolutely wild. And these sightings have included reports from commercial and military pilots. And again, two of the biggest, descriptors of these sightings has been these crafts will come out of the ocean at light speed or go into the ocean at light speed. Because, again, we've been receiving reports from military, Navy, and Air Force people for decades before this last hearing, talking about how there are bases underwater. And it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, these crafts flying around, maneuvering in weird ways, and vanishing. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And then we have, as recent as of today, NPR reporting about the drones over New Jersey. I'm just going to, read a little bit from this NPR article. There's something strange happening in the skies above New Jersey, and no one seems quite sure what to make of it. Not the governor, not members of Congress, not the FBI. What they know is that starting in mid-November, dozens of identified drones have been spotted at night flying in at least 10 different counties across the state. What they don't know is where the drones are coming from, who's flying them, and why. They've been spotted above critical infrastructure, according to authorities, including reservoirs, electric transmission lines, rail stations, police departments, and military installations. A U.S. Army base in northern Morris County has already had at least 11 drone sightings, Army officials said this week, several of which came after the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, moved to temporarily restrict drones from flying overhead. Again, more drone sightings even after the FAA restricted drones from flying over bases. In Somerset County in New Jersey, the FAA also banned drones from flying over the golf course owned by Donald Trump. And it's not illegal to fly a drone in New Jersey so long as the operator is certified with the FAA. Small unregistered drones being used for recreation can be flown in unrestricted areas. But the number and mysterious nature of these sightings has left many Garden State residents on edge. So too has their size, as many of these drones appear to be larger than those that are typically used by hobbyists. And side note, not from the article, that is true. Some of these drones appear to be the size of cars, of actual cars, if not larger. So far, the Office of New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy did not respond to a request for comment, but speaking at an unrelated bill signing earlier this week, Murphy said there have been 49 sightings of these drones on Sunday alone. Again, 4 days ago now? 49 sightings on Sunday alone. Although several of those may have been duplicates or merely possible sightings. It's constant. In a posting on social media last week, Governor Murphy said state officials were actively monitoring the situation and in close coordination with our federal and law enforcement partners. There is no known threat to the public at this time. Murphy's assurances have done little to quiet the concerns of residents and other officials across the state. In a statement posted to Facebook last week, the police chief of Florham Park, New Jersey, said, quote, "Their presence appears nefarious in nature." And during a House hearing on Monday focused on unmanned aerial systems, New Jersey Representative Chris Smith, a Republican, said that he thought the drones were, quote, "a very serious threat." Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, also a Democrat, also said in a statement on Monday, calling for more transparency from federal officials. Quote, per Cory Booker, "There is a growing sense of uncertainty and urgency across the state from constituents and local officials alike, despite assurances that the drones pose no threats to public safety. As such, I urge you to share any relevant information about these drone sightings with the public. Without transparency, I believe that rumors, fear, and misinformation will continue to spread." Then we have the military base. The base commander of the Picatinny Arsenal Military Research Base out of Morris County, New Jersey. So Lieutenant Colonel Craig Bonham II said that the drones were not theirs from the military installation. He said, quote, "While the source and cause of these aircrafts operating in our area remain unknown, we can confirm that they are not the result of any Picatinny Arsenal-related activities." The FBI has since opened an investigation, but Bureau officials say key questions remain unsolved. Y'all, this be crazy. Like, it's crazy, right? CNN even, like I said, on Thanksgiving, CNN had a live footage at one point, live breaking news of the drones in New Jersey. It's absolutely insane. And unidentified drones, and this is I'm going to read just the final section of this NPR article. Unidentified drones have puzzled the public before. Earlier this year, the Wall Street Journal reported about unidentified drones swarming Langley Air Force Base in Virginia for 17 days. As with the drones over New Jersey, those flights called to memory the Chinese spy balloon that the U.S. military shot down over the coast of South Carolina in 2023. The flights over New Jersey have led to calls for the military to shoot down the unidentified drones, but under federal law, the military is largely prohibited from doing so unless the drone poses an imminent threat. It's also illegal for individuals to shoot down any aircrafts, including drones. Now, imagine for a moment, because we have now seen hundreds of sightings in New Jersey alone. And as I said earlier, there are sightings right now all over the country. Los Angeles just had a lot over this last week. Again, the videos are insane. Arizona, Phoenix in particular, airport. What is going on? I'm not saying it's aliens, y'all, but what is going on currently? Have any of you guys seen anything, heard anything? Like I said earlier, I live outside of Nashville, and our Facebook and Reddit, I mean, you can even look it up right now if you Google it. Lots of sightings here in Nashville tonight as I'm recording this. So I don't know. I really don't know, but it is absolutely crazy. And because of all the UFO talk, there's been an increased kind of interest in string theory and quantum physics. And so I went down that rabbit hole too. And we're not going to talk about that because I don't even fully grasp it myself. But the kind of the core point explanation is that it's basically a theoretical framework in physics that aims to explain the, fundamental nature of the universe. We've had this understanding for a long time that the basic building blocks of reality, of what we see around us, are point-like particles. Like when you're in school and you're learning about photons, neutrons, atoms, things like that, right? We learn that we theorize it and visualize it as like a tiny dot, the world's tiniest little bubble, right? So string theory, the maths on that, mathematics, and physics works together to basically describe our world around us. So string theory is not mathematically sound. It hasn't been proven in any capacity, hence why it's a theory. But it basically visualizes, instead of those point-like particles, such as electrons, neutrons, atoms, that these are actually tiny little vibrating strings of energy, that these strings can vibrate in different ways, and each pattern of vibration corresponds to a different particle, like photons or gravitons. And an even more simple way to explain this is, all of these things, right? The building blocks of life, it basically goes to dimensions, the dimensions of what we can see around us, right? So another way to explain this is in everyday life, we inhabit a space of 3 dimensions, right? There's height, there's width, and there's depth. So if I walk outside, or I'm in my office right now, right? I have a microphone in front of me that's about 4 inches from my face. My ceiling, I can see the height of it, and then the depth from me, to the wall, or the width of my laptop screen in front of me. These are things that we perceive. So imagine it's back in the year 800 AD. Let's imagine we're settlers, we're pioneers, okay? We're tribal people. If we had to cross a river, we would know that we could walk around it, we could walk across it, or cross over it potentially, depending, right? Or wait for it to freeze and walk over it. There are 4 ways that we knew how to cross a river: around, over, through, or like over it if it freezes, right? Okay, we could quantify those 4 ways. We could write down those 4 ways. We could teach the 4 ways to cross. We could actually do them. In the year 2024, now we can also fly over it. There may have been fantastical imaginings in the year 800 about flight. We had theories about flying like a bird. We had imagination and imaginings, but making it an actual reality was beyond us, technologically speaking. It was like fantasy. It was as fantasy as sci-fi. But now today, we have a full understanding of aerodynamics. We can quantify the essentials for flight. We can write down how to fly, give it to someone, and they can go build an aircraft or a helicopter or a drone. We can write down how to fly in many different ways. We can fly now. So what was theoretical and mystery back in 800 AD is now solved and quantified fact. But we need better technologies and understanding of the universe to get to that point. If you think about it, y'all, there's still so much of the universe. I mean, do you guys really think that from 800 AD to 2024, we have solved the mysteries of the universe? We know everything about everything. No, clearly we don't. Now, that was not a perfect example, but it's a pretty simplified one, right? So these other dimensions are similar to us today as flight was in 800 AD. So when you think about, or have you heard people talk about, we live in a simulation. There are multiple dimensions out there. Imagine a fifth dimension. It's possible that the properties of a fifth dimension are just beyond us. We have height, width, depth, and then also time per Einstein. Einstein actually said that time is the fourth dimension. So currently we are living, you've heard of 4D, right? So that would be, again, height, width, depth, and time is pretty much what's widely accepted. Anything beyond that is currently just completely beyond us. And according to Albert Einstein, the theory of relativity, time is considered the fourth dimension. Again, meaning that to fully describe an event in your, that happens to you, you need to specify not only its location in three-dimensional space, but also its position in time. So essentially, space and time are intertwined as a single kind of thread fabric called space-time. I know it's a lot and it's a little nerdy, I know, but once you go down the rabbit hole, it's so freaking fascinating. Because something that pops up a lot in this is multiple dimensions. Are we living in a singular dimension? Are there other dimensions out there around us? Are there past? Are there present? I've even heard people try to rationalize paranormal things, which I personally don't believe in, but people, using the theory that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, and saying, well, maybe the energy that, is destroyed here, goes to a different dimension, things like that. And something that pops up with a lot of this, it's really fascinating when you start going through the questions, because, it also relates to aliens, right? A lot of people talk about, like aliens, black holes in space and and multiple dimensions. So, it's all, you have your science. String theory is incredible to read about on a scientific basis, obviously, even though it has not been proven. But, you have a lot of the science-based arguments for it. And then you have the non-science-based people arguments that are like advocating for aliens and all sorts of, and ghosts and demons, all sorts of random shit. It's wild. It is the Wild West of debate for sure. But again, because this weird stuff pops up, it's been popping up especially with the aliens, but another thing that's been popping up a lot more recently because of the UAP sightings is psychics. And it's a concept straight out of a TV drama, right? And I was trying to figure out, it's really interesting because it kind of ties into string theory and all of this other stuff is, when we're relating it to true crime, how do psychics solve crimes? Do they? Are they a nuisance? Are there examples of people who can? And just like clockwork, I have no idea why my TikTok algorithm is the way that it is, because it's certainly not for me. But I've seen a lot of TikTok tarot readers lately, right? Like these people who get on TikTok and they utilize hashtags and the algorithm in certain ways and just try to, do card readings and things like that. And I think it's batshit. That being said, it got me thinking about, different cases because the government hides things, and it has. You guys know about remote viewing, right? Remember the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats? Well, the United States government actually spent millions of dollars on a program trying to cultivate and bring people in with psychic powers, like literally psychic powers and issues, and abilities rather, to remote view, like using their mind to be able to tap into different locations to assist in battle on the battlefield, or get, rescue efforts and things like that. And it sounds like, again, a concept straight out of a TV drama, but in real life, the notion of psychics aiding law enforcement, it's a real thing, and it sparks heated debate. And remember on the Lori Vallow case, how I'm just going to throw up thinking about her. There was one particular psychic that was constantly making videos, and I'm sorry if you follow her, I'm sorry for you, because she is so full of shit. But, making all of these insane predictions and getting hope up in the families, and it's just, and people grasp so strongly onto it. It's a mess. But can psychics be a genuine source of insight, or are they just simply exploiting the desperate? So I want to talk about a couple notable cases, also different methods that psychics use. Again, a lot of these methods were utilized in U.S. military installation and research bases in a couple of these covert programs. But yeah, I just kind of went down the rabbit hole of it, and I want to talk about it because it's interesting. Okay, so let's start by breaking down what psychics claim they can do. Many say that they have ESP, or extrasensory perception, and that ESP lets them perceive information beyond the normal senses. That's the blanket term ESP. That might include a number of different things. Clairvoyance, which is seeing events and objects beyond physical sight. Telepathy, the ability to read thoughts. Psychometry, where touching an object may provide impressions about its owner or history. And then there's mediumship, which involves communicating with spirits. And I think a lot of us, mainly, I guess, in pop culture and in the world, see a lot of people who claim to be mediums. Now, when psychics work with law enforcement, I did some research and I got a whole list and kind of ran through them and read about them. There are a whole different handful that use all of those abilities to provide leads. So, some may describe a crime scene. They may offer details about a suspect. They may touch an article of clothing from a kidnapped child and claim they see visions about where they were located or what happened to them. And it's pretty intriguing, right? But I guess, how do they do it exactly? And there are a couple different techniques that so those were the ones that, the items that I just went over are basically the different senses, right? Like what they claim they can do, different abilities. So there are different methods in which they utilize these abilities in order to try to assist. So like I talked about a moment ago, remote viewing. That involves quote unquote seeing a location or event without being physically present there. So again, when a psychic may describe a crime scene, a suspect's current location, or even a victim's body. Psychometry, again, they typically hold evidence, handling it, like jewelry, clothing. They say that they can receive visions tied to the case when they do that. Channeling. Some psychics report actually receiving information directly from the victims about their deaths or their killers. She who shall not be named, I'm going to call her Voldemort of the true crime community, with the Lori Vallow case, claimed that she spoke directly to Tylee and JJ. And then there's dream analysis. Others report having vivid dreams containing clues, which they interpret as messages related to the case. And some police departments, as well as the families of victims themselves, have turned to psychics in high-stakes cases. So a couple of the biggest examples, and I guess most high-profile cases and investigations, would be, let's start out with one here actually local to me. It happened about 4 miles away from where I'm sitting right now. And that would be the 1975 kidnapping of Marcia Trimble. So Marcia Trimble vanished on February 25th, 1975, while delivering Girl Scout cookies in her Green Hills neighborhood. Despite an extensive search, her body was not discovered until 33 days later in a nearby garage. She had been strangled and sexually assaulted. The crime absolutely shocked Nashville and became one of Nashville's most infamous unsolved cases for decades. Dorothy Allison was a psychic from Nutley, New Jersey, And she already had a reputation and was fairly renowned for working on missing persons and murder cases. Her career included providing details for high-profile investigations like the Son of Sam case. And in the Marsha Trimble case, Dorothy Allison offered descriptions of the perpetrator and the location where Marsha could be found. She described a creek bed, a red and white house, as well as debris near where Marsha's body was later found. And elements of what she said were true. However, critics argued that those details were too vague and that they were not, they didn't directly lead to the discovery of Marsha Trimble's body or the arrest of a suspect. And even at the time, Dorothy Allison's involvement sparked mixed reactions from the public. She had a lot of supporters, and of course they admired her for trying to assist law enforcement out of the goodness of her heart. And then obviously, there's always the huge amount of critics when talking about psychics, and especially psychics helping law enforcement, and just questioning the overall reliability of psychic methods and how they could possibly intersect with criminal investigations. And her broader work as a whole was typically pretty torn apart, often a subject of skepticism, because she did have some instances of accurate predictions where others were just so vague or nonspecific that no one could really call it a definitive win. Oh my God, my throat, y'all. I have not, since I had COVID a couple months ago, my voice has pretty much been, I sound like a man now. I sound like a man. So sorry, you're hearing me drink my water. But yeah, so despite Dorothy Allison getting involved in this and providing these clues, the Marsha Trimble case went cold for decades. Initial suspicions fell on Jeffrey Womack, who was a neighborhood teenager, a bit rough around the edges and creepy, by all accounts, but DNA evidence actually eventually cleared him. The breakthrough only came in 2008. Obviously, we saw that a lot. A lot of true crime podcasts talk about that. The advances in forensic science identifies a lot of perpetrators from old cold case crimes, and that's exactly what happened here. Jerome Sidney Barrett was a convicted rapist living in the area, and he was deemed to be the perpetrator. He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 44 years in prison, not because of Dorothy Allison, but because of, I guess, in the words of Jerry, or in the words of Breaking Bad, science bitch. Another really big example is the death of Melanie Uribe that happened in 1980. One of the most famous examples. Psychic Etta Smith led police to a site where Melanie Uribe's body was discovered after claiming to see the location in a vision. But her knowledge of this raised suspicions. And despite the fact that she had a 100% accurate tip, I mean, she led the police to the site where they discovered her body. Police were like, how did she know this? And they actually arrested her on suspicion of murder. She was held in custody for nearly 4 days before investigators arrested the true perpetrators, 3 men who later confessed to the crime. Smith was fully exonerated and later won a lawsuit against the LAPD for a wrongful arrest, although the jury awarded her just a modest settlement compared to her claim. Which, that's wild. I didn't even know that happened. Imagine a psychic coming forward, leading police to a body, them arresting her, and then turns out she was just accurate. Another really quick final example here of how this can just go horribly, really, really quickly is the Sean Hornbeck case back in 2007. Not all psychic involvement ends positively. Sylvia Brown, she's a thing. She was a psychic. I'm sure all of y'all remember her. She was also she was on TV a lot, had a lot of commercials. Well, she made a devastatingly inaccurate prediction about Sean Hornbeck. If you recall, he was an 11-year-old boy who disappeared in 2002. Sylvia Brown used to go on the Montel Williams show. She was a constant guest. And She would take audience questions and make random predictions and things like that. Complete charlatan. But Sylvia Browne told Sean Hornbeck's parents that he was dead and that his body was located near two boulders. And that turned out to be complete bullshit. In reality, Sean had been abducted by a man named Michael Devlin and had been held captive for more than 4 years in Kirkwood, Missouri. And during this time, Devlin actually allowed Sean Hornbeck some freedom. He let him use a computer. He let him hang out with friends. But of course, there was, the underlying threat of murder and death, which kept Sean from seeking help. In 2007, the case took an absolute turn because Devlin abducted another boy, Ben Ownby. And there was a witness to Ben's abduction, and they actually reported crucial details that led police to Devlin. And during the investigation, authorities were astonished to find that find Sean alive. They came, they went to the apartment, to Devlin's apartment, and there they found Sean. And this case actually is called the Missouri Miracle. And Sylvia Browne, being the charlatan that she is, that incorrect prediction was one of the most high-profile errors that drew criticism because of the harm caused to Sean Hornbeck's family. Can you imagine having this famous psychic TV lady tell you, your son is dead, your son disappeared, gone for years? Obviously, we all know, 48 hours and, literally every minute counts. Imagine it being years. You pretty much expect the worst. This famous psychic TV psychic lady tells you, no, your son's dead. I see very clearly his dead body in between two big rocks. And then all of a sudden, law enforcement, on a separate, completely unrelated case, finds your son alive in an apartment. So it was Sean's own family and them keeping the case alive and pushing and pushing and pushing that actually, and then also Devlin kidnapping Ben Ownby that led to the resolution of that case. And I think the examples are fascinating. There are so many different examples out there of psychics, helping with police. There was one that was really interesting. I watched a documentary on it on YouTube, and it was an ex-Navy SEAL, actually. And he was talking about how he had a friend, also an ex-Navy SEAL, that had some sort of ability. And a local police department had a child. It was a child that was missing, and they couldn't find him. And I guess he used remote viewing or something. And he ended up telling police, walk like 700 steps north, 200 steps south, and, gave them very, very, very step-to-step instructions. And they're like, you're going to see it. And so police were like, bullshit, this is bullshit. Actually refused to follow his instructions for hours. And then they finally did. And it took them to the top of a hill that they never would have gone up. It was like a 6-year-old child who got lost in the woods. He wasn't kidnapped. He got lost in the woods. And he had heard, go to the top point, for vantage, like go to the highest point. And so he actually went up this like mountain and was in an abandoned cabin. The police never, ever, 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 ever would have discovered that had the supposed psychic come out and said, I'm seeing where this is, blah, 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 blah. So it's fascinating. And I guess my honest personal opinion here is, which obviously this is just our own personal opinion. It's not science or fact-based. But I believe that all of this shit's entirely possible. We don't know how the world works. We don't know how the universe works. We don't know how our minds work. We don't know anything. It's the cases where people are born in, say, like 1995 and then talk about previous lives that they lived and can give all of these insane details about some person that lived 300 years before them, right? At like 4 years old. It's crazy, right? There are unexplained phenomena in every aspect of life. And I'm not saying that none of this is possible. Obviously, our government probably wouldn't be spending millions and millions of dollars in military budget for covert research labs, right? If there wasn't something to it. So it's really fascinating, though, you guys. We're actually, in my opinion, we're living in a really fascinating time right now with all the UAP sightings, with like just advancements in science overall. AI technology is wild. It's really fascinating, especially if you go down the rabbit hole. But one of the reasons where I guess I'm kind of segueing from the UAPs and whatnot down through the psychic phenomenon and whatnot is because I discovered a man by the name of Darryl Anka. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And first I want to talk about skeptics, okay? I want to talk about some skepticism here, because critics of psychic involvement in anything, whether it's a psychic saying things for self-help purposes, if you go to a psychic and have your future read, anything like that, critics have some concerns. First there's the issue of statistical probability, right? Most psychic quote unquote predictions are broad enough to apply to a range of scenarios, right? Imagine, again, I hate saying she who shall not be named, but in the Lori Vallow case, right? She described, in that case, like near water. Well, holy shit, dude. You're in freaking Idaho. Of course there's going to be water or fields or a lake. You know what I mean? Having someone describe a wooded area near water or a man wearing dark clothing, that fits millions of cases and instances. So psychologists also point to cognitive bias. And cognitive bias affects both investigators and the public as well. And there are multiple different types of cognitive biases. The first one is confirmation bias. We've all heard that, right? So investigators sometimes, when psychics get involved, or just police in general, focus on predictions or evidence that aligns with existing evidence while ignoring inaccuracies. So let's say that someone disappears and a psychic comes out and says something that aligns with 20% of it, but there's no way the rest could be true. But because one aspect of it, one thread, one piece of the fabric is true, well, it must be. There's the Barnum effect. The Barnum effect is my absolute favorite. The Barnum effect is basically a cognitive bias that occurs when people interpret vague statements as if they were specifically made about them. So an example of that would be horoscopes. People interpret these vague personality descriptions as if they are completely about them. Read in a newspaper or magazine, your horoscope for, Virgo, blah, 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 blah. Okay, me and how many other millions of people? But it's vague statements about this. And my all-time favorite, y'all, fortune cookies, right? Some people really do believe that fortune cookies are real. But my all-time favorite, and it's actually a big thing on TikTok right now, tarot readers, tarot cards, right? Oh my God. I want to scream. There are some people who get on TikTok and they claim that they're doing tarot readings, right? They have really nice decks of cards and they will start flipping cards over and saying, you're getting back with your ex. I see someone in your life, a man who drives a red car. His birthday could be in July. This person just really wants to talk to you. And, or you're going through a lot right now. You're up for a promotion maybe, or people want to talk to you about an issue. Just so generalized statements. And of course they flood the description of the video with hashtags, right? Hashtag tarot, hashtag psychic, hashtag, spirituality, hashtag whatever the fuck. And it's basically the way that social media works. If you watch a few seconds of a video, that's going to inform the algorithm. Thus, you're going to be seeing more of those. And I have seen countless people fall for this. And they always start the video of, this is the reading for December 12th, 2024. If you're seeing this, it's meant to be for a reason. And I can totally see how gullible people would fall for that. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, that may be the hook. And then they sit and watch the video and so many just blanket generalized statements are being made. They're like, oh my God, this is made for me. When really it's just the fact that they've watched 30 plus seconds of the video or the algorithm is going to show them more and more and more and more content like that. So outside of confirmation bias and the Barnum effect, we also have motivated reasoning. And motivated reasoning is where in desperate situations, people are more likely to accept unconventional ideas. Grieving families, people who feel like they have nothing left, they are more likely to reach out to psychics or just people with unconventional methods, right? Then just overall, there's a lack of scientific evidence. Research into psychic phenomena hasn't produced consistent, replicable results. Many quote-unquote successes can be explained by chance, intuition, or psychological techniques such as cold reading. And I totally get it. I completely and totally get it. I can't fathom if I had a loved one, that was murdered and it went cold and I'm feeling desperate, I'm feeling upset. And then a psychic comes out and you contacts me and is like, I've seen, your loved one's body. They're dead. They're located here. How would that make me feel? Especially if it turns out that they're completely full of shit, and beyond the skepticism of the ability, there's just serious ethical questions as a whole about psychics working with law enforcement. Again, false hope for families. Psychics can unintentionally or sometimes intentionally mislead grieving families. Cases like Sylvia Brown and Sean Hornbeck. That can show how devastating it is when psychics make incorrect claims. Then there's the diversion of resources, because sometimes law enforcement will go and follow a psychic's lead, right? They'll talk to the psychic, they'll report it, and the law enforcement will go and follow the psychic's lead. That can waste valuable time and money, especially when they turn out to be dead leads. And then also there's public misrepresentation. TV shows and media often glamorize psychics, creating these unrealistic expectations about their effectiveness as well as just their abilities as a whole. And I totally get it that the emotional toll of unsolved crimes can push people to seek answers just wherever they can find them, but it can be really, really nasty. But where does that leave us, right? Well, some experts actually kind of sit in the middle of the two, between psychics working for law enforcement and then, the argument, skepticism against. Law enforcement agencies could document psychic claims systematically, comparing predictions to case outcomes. Psychics shouldn't ever be primary source of evidence, but wouldn't documenting their efforts, couldn't those insights serve as supplementary tools? And obviously everything should rely on evidence-based methods. Science and rational inquiry are in fact, still the most reliable paths to justice. But maybe there is a place for this because we still don't necessarily understand the universe around us, right? I mean, either way, it captures our imaginations, and there's so much content about this because it challenges the boundaries of what we actually believe is possible, But there are a lot of there are a lot of questions about ethics, effectiveness, and, the limit of human intuition. And the one last thing that I'd really quickly like to talk about is Darryl Anka. He's a filmmaker, author, and channeler, best known for his connection with Bashar, an interdimensional entity from a parallel reality. And over the last 40 years, Darryl Anka has become a prominent figure in the spiritual and metaphysical community. I thought that he was just some crackpot who was on YouTube and, all the social media platforms. No, how wrong I was. I thought he was just some crackpot that nobody cared about because it's just so out there. Not the case. He is apparently loved by thousands of people. Thousands of people. Like I said, he goes to Sedona in California, and he does group readings all over the world, and he is worshipped. And he basically just offers insights into universal laws, personal transformation, self-help, the nature of existence. And I went through a rabbit hole of his videos, right? 99.9% of what this man says is just common sense, right? Common sense. And we're going to get into some of his beliefs, but you really need to watch, because there's Darryl Anka and he's a person. And then when he channels Bashar, which conveniently during the time of when people are paying hundreds of dollars to see him in a seminar, he'll channel this alien interdimensional entity, and he changes his voice, his mannerism, physical mannerisms, all of it, to talk about, to answer questions. Like, he answers audience questions. So Darryl Anka was born in Ottawa, Canada, and raised in California. And from a young age, he more or less showed a deep interest in creativity and the arts. So he did end up pursuing a career in the entertainment industry, where he worked as a visual effects designer. And he wasn't just like a small fry. He worked on Star Trek, the motion picture. He worked on Iron Man. He worked on Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, imagine that. A career bringing some of the most iconic cinematic visions to life. He did it. And then his life journey kind of changed. He claims that in the 1970s, he experienced a series of UFO sightings in Los Angeles. He has described many times seeing a metallic triangular craft that defied explanation. He talked about the way it moved, how it was darting around. It was darting left to right, up and down. It hovered. And he describes it as leaving him awestruck. And after these encounters, he had an insatiable curiosity. He became obsessed and dove into research on UFOs, extraterrestrial life, mysteries of the universe, all of that. And then that exploration eventually introduced him to the concept of channeling, where individuals claim to communicate with entities from other realms, or, if we want to talk about string theory and whatnot, dimensions. So intrigued, Darryl Anka attended some channeling sessions, and the way he describes it, the experience, quote unquote, clicked for him, and he realized that this was something that he needed to do. Fast forward to 1983, and Darryl began channeling Bashar. He describes Bashar as an extraterrestrial from the civilization of Essassani, located in a parallel reality to ours. According to Darryl, Bashar is an advanced being who is here and being channeled through him to share wisdom about personal growth, the mechanics of reality, and humanity's potential. And Darryl Anka's entire spiel is built basically on a few core principles, right? Like a few of Bashar's teachings. One, Bashar, okay, so this is what quote unquote Bashar is saying through Darryl Anka. Follow your passion. Your highest excitement is the key to aligning with your true self. So basically, wake up every day and try your best to follow what you are most passionate about. Number 2, you create your own reality. He emphasizes that perception shapes our experience, and everything is fundamentally neutral until we assign meaning to it. Number 3, living in the present. The only reality, per Bashar, is the now. Embracing this fosters gratitude and awareness. There's no living in the past. It's already happened. There's no need to live in anticipation of the future, that we are now living in the present and that we have to embrace that. And then number 4, interconnectedness. Bashar says that all beings are deeply interconnected and humanity is on a path to awakening higher states of consciousness. Now, there's nothing incredibly or inordinately special about that message, right? It's all pretty benign, self-help, things that you would hear from some spiritualists, some gurus, self-help people, whatever, right? Well, naturally, Darryl Anka needed to write some books about this and sell them. So he wrote one book called Blueprint for Change, and then another one called Shards of a Shattered Mirror. And these are books supposedly written by Bashar as he was being channeled through Darryl Anka. And they explore topics like personal transformation and humanity's collective evolution. Darryl Anka also, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie First Contact, which was actually really interesting. Saw it a couple years ago. Darryl Anka produced it. It's a documentary, again, called First Contact, and it basically shares his channeling journey and delves into the implications of extraterrestrial communication. It's personal stories, witnesses, scientific theories. It has military people. It has scientists, as well as metaphysical speakers and whatnot. I mean, it is a fascinating documentary, whether you believe in it or not. And again, Darryl hosts live workshops and seminars around the world where he does Q&As, sessions. He allows attendees just to ask random questions of Bashar, and Bashar will answer them. And it's absolutely wild to witness. And I mean, that's basically what he's doing now. He's selling books. He's selling sessions and things like that. What I find really, really, really interesting is the fact that he makes a series of predictions. Quote, Bashar does, right? Of course, Bashar, tells us things that are potentially going to happen. It is supposedly Bashar predicted 9/11. But one of the big things is that he predicted is the fact that we are between 2024 or 2025 going to be introduced to aliens. That what Bashar says is that UFOs/UAPs are going to make themselves so known that they're going to be so public that the governments around the world have no choice but to basically acknowledge, and that contact is going to happen. So that's going to be really interesting. I love shit like this. It never works out. Not everyone is Baba Yaga, but I digress. It's going to be interesting. He basically predicts some sort of like shift, multidimensional shift in the world that he said by 2027, humanity will witness an event that will unequivocally confirm we are not alone in the universe. By 2027. I'm going to hold on to that date and watch. But yeah, and he also describes advancements in AI and technology and how they are direct reflections of the shifts in our collective consciousness. I mean, he's made a bunch of different predictions. But currently the big one is about open contact with aliens. He also did talk about how, predict basically an uptick in UFO sightings and whatnot, basically leading to the government like forcing their hand into acknowledging it. So, I mean, whatever, I guess, right? But it's been really interesting to turn on CNN and listen and watch NPR and have them be reporting on UAPs almost on a daily basis now. So it's really fascinating. But yeah, what do you guys think? I know that this has been the most batshit random episode, but what do you guys think? Do you think that we are alone? Do you think there are aliens? Do you think we're nearing alien, open contact? Do you think that these whistleblowers coming out are telling the truth? I want to know what you think. What do you think is going to happen in the next couple of years? What do you think these drones are? Do you think it's just a slow news day that they're trying to make up or distract from actual issues at hand? Or do you think that there is something to them? And I also want to know what you think about psychics working with law enforcement. But that is it for today, guys. Let me know what you think. You can follow me individually, personally, Robin_WSTD on Instagram. You can follow me, my animals, my dogs, see clips from the Chelsea Wolfe show I went to, and just follow me if you have any interest. We Saw the Devil podcast is the official podcast page on Instagram. Don't forget to follow there. And again, I am back feeling happier and better than ever. So I am excited to talk about, I have a variety of topics I'm excited to delve into and discuss. So I will talk to you guys again shortly. Until next crime.